Vice President of Business Development at PartSource. I would like to welcome everyone to the first session of the new PartSource Operational Resilience webinar series. The pandemic showed us the importance of being prepared for anything and revealed gaps in the healthcare supply chain. During this time of uncertainty and global business disruption, healthcare leaders are called to optimize operations to ensure quality care is available to patients no matter what happens next. Future-proofing your operations requires digital transformation of the medical technology supply chain, combined with strategic focus on building in the data, process, and technologies to create a resilient operating system. During this webinar series, we bring you actionable insights and proven strategies to strengthen operational resilience through data-driven decision-making and process improvement directly from thought leaders and peers leading the way. Today's presentation, 7 strategies for leveraging data to improve decision quality, will be presented by Jay Olson, Director of Biomedical Services for Marshfield Clinic Health System. Before we begin, I would like to review a few housekeeping items. First, you have a control panel at the side of your screen. You can minimize and expand this panel. Second, you can submit questions using the question portal of the control panel. We will answer questions at the end of the presentation. If your question was not answered, we will respond to you individually after the event. All registrants will receive a link to recording after the webinar. The information will be sent to the email address with which you registered for this webinar. You will also receive a CEU certificate from PartSource within 1 week of the event. And now let me introduce you to our featured speaker. Jay Olson got started with his biomed journey after completing his military service. After finishing biomed education, he continued to get experience working in the field with specialists including dialysis, nuclear medicine, and surgery equipment. He landed his first leadership role as a manager for dialysis equipment. Then, over the next 15 years, he had served in various biomed leadership roles throughout Wisconsin. 5 years ago, Jay joined Marshfield Clinic and is now the System Director of Biomedical Services. In Jay's time at Marshfield, the organization has grown significantly through mergers and acquisitions. Marshfield Clinic Health System, HTM, has gone from 6,000 pieces of equipment managed when Jay started to over 35,000. And the organization is now comprised of 50 clinics and 12 hospitals. As you can imagine, Jay and his team have had to utilize strategies to manage this growth and equipment tally along with the team required to support it. Jay, thank you for joining us today and sharing your experience and advice with our audience. To kick things off, can you dig right into the 7 strategies and share some of your outcomes? If we have time, we'll be sure to engage the audience for the live questions. Be sure to share what led your team to consider data as a component in their strategies for improvement. Take it away.
Thanks, Nicole. Just to kick off, that first picture that you had of me on there, that was about 5 years ago with the growth and everything. There's a little glare coming off of the forehead here, so I apologize if you're blinded a little by that. There's been a lot of exciting growth with Marshfield Clinic. Our biomed group would not been capable of any of the successes without the support of the leadership at Marshfield Clinic Health System. The individual efforts of our biomed team, and certainly the vendor support that we've utilized. So I'm going to apologize in advance. I will have a few shameless vendor plugs and bragging about Marshfield Clinic. It's not me, it's our team that's put all this together, and a lot of these strategies that I'm sharing are not original. It's with an accumulative 20 years of leadership with working with some amazing individuals. The past 5 years with Marshfield Clinic, I've had the opportunity to exercise what I've learned with driving the data with its into success. So right off with our slide here, we embrace the data integrity as an opportunity to increase the value and reduce conflict. Right out of the gate, we have to have clean data. When you're building your database, whatever you're using for a medical equipment management plan, your purchase price, your age of your equipment, your risk, your category placement, all that has to be spot on. Without that, your data will not be believable. Also, you have to be collecting your spend on the device also. So parts, service, contracts, all that has to be imported back in. You can go back to the general ledger and try to harvest that data, but your best source is good data in, good data out for placing those reports. We'll expand on this, how this data is used in a couple other slides. How do you do this? So with the acquisitions, I started out with 6,000 pieces of equipment. We're up to 35,000. You have to have clean imports. You're pushed to bring on the new hospital. You're pushed to have the compliance in place. But step one, you got to have your equipment priced. You have to have your category, subcategory aligned with your current practice. I've actually got, we've evolved staff to be assigned to review the equipment as it's coming, as new equipment's getting added to the database. Your parts and service, you got to have that. Back in the day, we used to order a part and then you would hand enter your part number and your price into the work order, and it wasn't very accurate. We actually have we partnered with PartSource. Parts and service are migrated into the right into the work order, and the guys don't even have to touch it. The other big part is your supply chain relationship. When you cut a PO and the vendor adds on a Knibbler pin or whatnot, when he's doing a service, your PO will change or evolve, or there's extra parts in that. We actually have an approval process. When that PO comes back through, it gets updated in our work order, so we know exactly what we spent on that device. Another opportunity for getting that data cleaned up, as we have volumes, we're entertaining and actually going through a couple of these processes. There's some vendors out there right now that will help you with aligning your data, help cleaning it up. Metasource, we've been working, great company. They're again, here's some shameless plugs, sorry, but Metasource, you got data insights. We're reviewing an opportunity to actually go right through TMS and have our data cleaned up. And we're utilizing Metagate right now, which is a whole different conversation, but it's certainly any of our network devices that helps us with verifying what's on site. And even when we go into a new location, we turn on our Metagate interface and we can see the new devices out there, and there's no surprises. Some reference values, because there's always tastes great, less filling. You know, who's right when you're calling a pump, infusion versus, you know, your category versus subcategory. It's great to just go to. There's always an opinion on what your category should be. It's always great to go to a tiebreaker and get ECRI. Data insights or the GUDID. It's a source to go back to for this specific pump and get a category, subcategory, and actually just have a tiebreaker for that. So
Jay,
go ahead.
What decisions are you using this cleaned up data to make?
You know, the impact of this data integrity is so important or catastrophic that I added a second slide to this presentation to drill down on that. So let's drill into that. I got to show you my pretty chart yet. I got rambling on about war stories with tastes great and less filling. This is a chart just to show some of the growth where I can speak from experience about having clean data. On 2016, the light blue line represents the total inventoried biomedical equipment, and the dark blue line has the total inventory biomedical equipment value, so the purchase price of that equipment. And just for reference, this will be shown a couple times during the presentation, but it is a good linear growth. You'll see, you know, as we added equipment, obviously the price increased, and actually it followed pretty close. The last year we did add a bunch of a diagnostic imaging. So we obviously had a little peak, but for the most part, it tracks quite well linearly. So continuing on with their integrity, you know, the reporting is only good as your data. It's really embarrassing when capital planning and you run a report and there is opportunities for failure. It happens, you know. One of the guys will add the new asset, and the easiest thing to do in some of the programs is duplicate the asset. Well, you bring a brand new $2 million MRI into the system, you got all the paperwork, and one of those little fields in the background, when you copy the data, the incoming date on that was a 10-year-old, was our 10-year-old MRI that we just replaced. So when you're bringing this report to leadership and saying, well, Jay, we just replaced that MRI, make sure your data is clean. You gotta have a review process. It's pretty embarrassing. And if you do that once, they're going to doubt you. Your leadership is counting on you for accurate data. How we've grown our team is with the data-driven staffing models. As we add hospitals, we continue. Some of the smaller hospitals that we've added on, you can't add a FTE to that. So you look at a complete package and saying, well, our entire system has this many pieces of equipment, and we're operating as a shared service, so we're going to need to add X amount of FTEs for the equipment value and count. So it needs to be accurate. And then the other part is the in-house contract evaluation. You truly get to see what's being spent on it. So you need to have that in your database, and it needs to be accurate. So you'll see my chart over here. What I did is I overlaid I don't want to give too many of our trade secrets, but you'll notice that the green line is our total cost of service. That's labor, parts, contracts, everything over the past years. And then I overlaid it with that original blue chart I showed you with the value of the equipment. Now, if you look, the value of the equipment has increased over 5-fold over the past 5 years, where our budget has only barely doubled. Now, if I only had this line to explain to leadership, I know we've added some equipment, Jay, but and I'm going to say this a couple times, Jay, you idiot, the budget's doubled. What are you doing? I have data to drive that we're actually doing a pretty good job of managing the spend with the equipment we have. Our strategy too is to leverage the data to drive continuous improvement and the AEM. AEM is, sorry, I'm just catching up on my slides and my notes. I got to keep myself. Your AEM is your alternate equipment management. Allows you to adjust the frequency and manufacturers preventive of the manufacturer's preventive maintenance if certain criteria is met or justified. I have a recent example. We just had joint commission visiting one of our sites, and it was pointed out that we had a very, very aggressive program, meaning I think he was trying to be kind, and he was telling me we had some PM stretched out pretty far. And I am a biomed. My history, I know personally, and we count on our guys to evaluate this, but we do this so that we can provide the service instead of doing a bedside monitor where they do not fail. It's mostly consumable leads, and we'll put our staff in where it matters on the high risk equipment, on the diagnostic imaging, so we can bring savings back into the department. And what was awesome about this is I showed them our spreadsheets, our gonculators, our calculators for everything to do it, and our data backed up everything I was talking about to them, and our decisions were all based off of that data and work orders. And he says, okay, well, that's all we can do. It was one of the more intrusive joint commission visits, and it was nice to have because we did well. So as my chart had, or my PowerPoint here has, your device, just if you went straight off of your percent failures, we base our AEM off of the model number, failure rate, and risk. If your device has a 40% failure rate, do you roll it back to the manufacturer's annual PM just because of it hit that level? You got to go back and look at the failures. In this one example, 35% of the failures were those rechargeable batteries related. So then dig down in the data. You got to have that information, have your technicians filling out the work orders. What was the frequency of the battery change? Are you changing those lead acids every 2 years, or are you just trying to stretch it out to 3 years? Was it a bad batch of batteries? There was a dark cloud. I don't know if anybody can recall that, but 8 years ago, I swear there was batteries failing all over the biomed world. I don't know if whoever creates the chemicals for that, or the lead, or however that works, but there was a bad batch of batteries out there. The other thing is it's maybe invest in new technology. If the lead acid batteries are failing, go to a newer style equipment with newer style batteries. It'll last longer. It's another justification for capital. The other part for continuous improvement, sorry to get drug out on that AEM, but that's a huge part of our efficiencies with our program. As we continue to grow, embrace the growth with your systems. If you're adding another hospital or if there's an opportunity to add another clinic, the more safety in numbers, but also the standardized codes across the system. So when you have that data clean, you can go into 12 different hospitals and have a canned report. You'll still customize it to whatever their failure rates are, but it's a lot easier conversation instead of trying to generate another report with a different Excel sheets and customize it for every one of these hospitals. It keeps your life a lot easier, where again, you can be spending your time on evaluating contracts or making sure your program is safe. So I kind of beat up on this slide. I went out in the weeds a little bit. The last point I wanted to bring up is that total cost to maintain your equipment. When I was watching the pricing on that, is it brings up to a ratio of a cost of service. So it's important that all that data, your failure rates, all that stuff gets put back into your slide number 1, making sure your data is accurate. So, I'm sorry, Nicole, I'm probably running us off in the weeds on that. You're giving me the Jay. You're at least I didn't start talking about my chickens yet. So yeah. Using data to eliminate manual processes and refocus technicians on high value activities. This is huge. Again, AEM, work smarter. This is a big one, and I'm going to put some shameless plugs about our part source, but consolidation and automation via our pro agreement. We have a batch billing setup with our pro agreement. So I looked last year, and we have about 5,250 line items in a traditional way. I used to fill out my PO, I'd fill it out, I'd call the vendor, get some pricing, I'd fill out my PO, take that paper down into the supply chain office and say hi to Sue, and she would scan it, it would go off to the vendor. This is a lot of manual work, and she would scan it out, and then maybe it would get to the vendor, and maybe you'd get your part in 3 days. What this traditionally, when you did that process from a reliable resource, I'm not putting this in print at all, but from a reliable resource, 3 bar stools down, 5,250 line items needing a PO. The traditional PO costs $100 per PO to generate. That's almost $500,000. So it is $500,000 of spend that you're just doing on PO processing. Now things have gotten more efficient. We'll even cut it back to $50 a PO for generating in a hospital system. You're still talking with that volume, $250,000 of savings just by automating this thing. There's no more paper requests, as I said. There's it's a simple documented approval process. My staff put a part in, and depending on the approval level, if it gets up to me, I pop open my phone, I go to my part source page, and I approve the part, and they have it next day or whatever they need. It's not bogged down at all. We do once that accumulative bill comes together, we have a weekly invoice that we validate it, we update it into the system, a couple hours of staffing to do that. When the part gets shipped out to us, we're not going through the Lawson system directly, so we can bypass receiving. The parts come right to our biomed shop. We document the receiving through our TMS, and which in line with that upload, it shows it was received and it can be paid for. It's slick. Again, I touched on a little bit, but the parts and prices that we ordered are imported right into the work order right after the technician has placed the order. And I have a lifetime spent. I have a finger on the pulse for what we're spending that day. No more delays with adding vendors to the hospital system. The hospitals are built for buying supply. Their supply chain. They're built for buying consumables. So you have a vendor that makes this one special part, it's 2 weeks to get the W-2 and add them into the system. It's just efficient. So we partnered with PartSource. There's other part companies out there that do a great job. I'm just sharing my successes. We also have our PartSource support with reporting out so that we can look at opportunities of what we're spending our money on.
So Jay, are there other platforms or integrations that have eliminated manual processes or paper data gathering?
I do get a little excited with the PartSource examples. Sorry, it is awesome. I do like to brag about that, but absolutely, automation. We have leveraged our automated efficient features in our CMMS, our TMS program. We actually are training our users, instead of calling and doing the dictation for a work order, we have our users trained to use the work order request online. So the work order comes into a dispatch, we can assign it out to the technician. He sees it on his phone and calls the customer back. No delays with that. I actually have our customers, they can look up their work order history. If they want to see their department inventory, they put down their department code. It spits out the inventory of what we have built into our database. The only gotcha with that, again, I'm going to go back to slide 1. If you give them access to that, you better have clean data, because they're going to come in and say, what is this? So it's step 1, got to have that clean data, and you got to sustain it and maintain it. So we do have work order history also. Automated EOC reports, I mentioned before, we're reporting up to 12 different systems where they want their EOC reports. We get that canned report generated every month. It's a lot of labor that is pulled out of that. So we developed that we partnered with our facility folks, but stuff like that, it's timely to get it built, but once it's built, wow, it's a huge time saver. So
that's great. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Number 4, leverage analytics data to manage procurement of capital parts and services associated with medical equipment. Here's probably, to take a step back, almost as important as your data integrity. Slide 1, you have to, I started with Marshfield Clinic when it was a little smaller, so it was a little easier, and then every hospital we added on. I manage all the spend, the capital, I'm sorry, I approve the capital, but the contracts, the parts, the labor, everything to do with the medical equipment comes out of my bucket or my cost center. So then it's a little easier when I'm taking risk on devices. It all comes out, and I'm accountable for all of it. So if something goes wrong, I need to have my finger on the pulse with good data. Here's one of our first examples. I've been beaten up on this, and everybody hears this is probably rolling their eyes, but this is a great example. We had 10 ultrasounds. I won't name the names or anything, but I'm using even numbers. Each one of those ultrasounds across Marshfield Clinic system, each one of those ultrasounds had a $10,000 contract on it. So we were paying $100,000 per year. So I got we got some tests. We had some test equipment in place, but I got our guys trained up to do the preventive maintenance and frontline repairs on them. There is some costs associated with that, but really not to dirty in the numbers. I had one of those ultrasounds fail about 6 months into my risk-free analysis here, our risk-free running, and the repair on it was $12,000. And here it comes. Jay, you idiot. While this is under contract, this would only cost us $10,000. You took the contract off of it, and now it's cost us an extra $2,000 out of our budget. And I'm like, well, number one, it's okay. It didn't come out of your budget. It came out of my budget, and then actually we saved $88,000 this year by running those devices at risk. Easy math, and it was a good year. You can have a lot worse years, but you need to be able to track it and report it, and it has to be historical so you can show over the years your savings. So your key point to all this, a lot of this with leveraging and the spend, you got to have that underneath your account, and I can help you with that. We've done that with the hospitals we're bringing on, and it's a great practice. I kind of repeat on this: the hospital supply chains, when you're ordering parts, the hospital supply chains are built to order those consumables. We have PartSource where you open up the window and it's online and it's biomed friendly and you can find the parts you need. And again, you partner with your reliable part source. I'm in a medical parts distributor. You can do your automation, your reporting, your tracking, everything goes into that system. The capital consolidation, another way to leverage that. So I am, every capital purchase that comes through, we try to assist with presenting, our forecast for the year. A simple example, when you have your ESUs, so we have 10 ESUs. The ESUs are higher risk. They're becoming more expensive to maintain. We're tracking the price on them. We've had a higher failure rate on them. End of life is coming around the corner on them. We have those 10 devices between the 10 different hospitals that had these. Suddenly we have bulk purchasing, going out and buying one ESU, you're not doing as well. I'm working on tracking the savings on this because we've put together quite a few deals with this where we do a bulk purchase, or we forecast out and say, this is the year we're going to upgrade all of our defibrillators. And we do that bulk purchase as a system. You can save a lot of money. We've been partnering with our supply chain folks, and it's been working very well. All right. Utilize data to unlock the cost savings opportunities. So quarterly reviews, we do meet with our vendor, and we have monthly reviews with my leadership, but the quarterly reviews, we can actually uncover missed savings. A lot of them have a association with if you would have ordered either bulk purchases, or a lot of times the OEM is great for your high risk equipment, but some of your equipment that's getting near the end of its path, you can put refurbished parts in and certainly just get it across the finish line until you're purchasing new equipment. So we do a review of that. The other part is the point of approval. I mentioned before, I can go on my phone and I'll look at the approval, and it's a brand new tube. And have we looked at the age of the device? I don't like approving a $100,000 CT tube without a little bit of conversation on the life of the equipment, the replacement. Do we want to look at used? Do we want to look at third-party opportunities? You got to catch that right at the point of approval. I've mentioned GL review, general ledger review. I had to do a lot of that before I had our equipment, our work orders, our contracts, all of our spend going into our TMS. So right now, when the GLs, usually general ledgers, are probably about 2 months. There's always a couple ads, and it's with any hospital system, but you're not getting lifetime data. I'll report to my 2 months prior, and my TMS, what we have documented TMS and what's in the general ledger are pretty close. So easy way to go through that is you open up your general ledger underneath your big vendor spends, and you sort by cost. You filter by the vendor and you sort by cost, and you can really do some low-hanging fruit if you're looking at trying to kick off your program for savings. And my statement right below that, the low-hanging fruit with contract reduction, it's large savings with a short-term impact. If you're looking for the long run, all those others, your monitoring of what you're ordering, the consistency of your quarterly reviews, all that other stuff is your long-term plan. But if you need something to bring administration, start looking at your contracts and sorting them out, and invest in your staff and start frontlining stuff.
So Jay, it almost sounds like you base your decisions all off the amount of spend. Is this the case?
Yeah, so I report up to facilities, and facilities we go directly up to our financial leadership. So a lot of it, we do get over focused on the dollars. Savings is the end product. We make a major change, like we drop a full service contract on a CT. We need to provide a equal or better service to our customer first off. We develop a plan A, B, or C for service. Number one, we either try to train our guys. We have the vendor. We don't want to make enemies with our vendor yet. And then also we have a plan C if our vendor's busy or we're a non-contract customer and we get downscaled, we can reach out to a third party. And here I go again. PartSource does have opportunities that we've been developing with that also. So, but first we want to meet the safety and quality demands and keep the customer involved and happy with what we're doing. And if that is successful, then we can celebrate the savings. So, yeah, it's a challenge. If the customer's not on board with you, you're going to be up a uphill battle for a while. So I just wanted to review this slide. Remember I was showing you the fivefold of equipment growth versus just the budget doubling. Just a review for that, because it makes a little more sense with my next slide, where those green lines are now represented by my whatever color you want to call these, but there's a whole bunch of neat stuff on there. Just catching up with my my slides. Okay. So if you look at the growth on this, it's I'm just going to bump ahead one more slide and make sure that, yep, okay. But when you look at the slides on here, we use the data to unlock the cost savings. The blue spend represents our contract spend on the out of our total budget. I wish I could have, I'm not the, I should have had Nicole doctor this up a little bit, but that background of that blue growth to show, you know, our equipment growth and then our spend and where we're applying our spend. But if you look at it, I've been saying no to point of sale contracts, no to renewals on contracts. I'm investing in our staffing. You'll notice from year one to year two, we added some staff so that we could start taking on some of these contracts. The yellow obviously represents our staff. You'll look at the purchase services. So as our staff starts getting trained and we're dropping off contracts, we are having to call in vendors on time and material to fill the gap between our technicians being able to put the parts in themselves. But if you look at we're still showing growth, but if you look at the growth, if it is a linear growth and we would have been doing what we were doing in 2016, my chart doesn't go big enough. So a good example of you know, just looking at every contract, looking at everything is very tiring. Training your staff, your guys got to be on board, but it will show your success on how you do it. So
what do you do with this information? Is this how you report what you're doing up?
Yeah, this really is it helps me demonstrate to leadership for adding the training and what the staff can do for the cost of service. It really shows, you know, that individual, if I add this staff, I can get rid of this chunk of the contract, and or if I put in this training. So I've had, again, I can't stress enough how lucky I am to be in an organization where I am showing them what we're doing, but they're letting me do it. You know, there's two parts to it. You got to be able to report it, and you got to have a leadership on board with you. So it's an awesome thing. Using data to demonstrate clinical engineers teams value to the other departments within the organization. All these charts kind of add up to this neat little green line right here. Your cost of service ratio, I touched on it a little bit before. It's difficult to measure budget success with constant growth and ads. So, you know, the story started out with 6,000, up 35,000 pieces of equipment. How do you show financial success as you keep on piling on more work? Well, the cost of service, and I've learned this from this has been around for a long time. It's nothing new, but you have clean data to represent it, and it shows what you're doing with your equipment. When I started out, we were at 10.5%. We've dropped that down. We're running about 3.3%. And you can be careful with this, because this is a consistent value that I've reported. So I have my inventory, I have our spend, it shows my grade. If I compare my 3.3 to somebody else's 4.5%, there's always nuances and difference. So that what you have to do is track it internally and make sure that that slope is going the right direction. If you continue building on your program and somehow either your data is changing or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So this is kind of the how I demonstrate what we're doing for the organization. And I always bring up when all else fails and they corner me, I'll bring up that ultrasound. Hey, I saved $88,000 on the ultrasounds, and then I can build off of that. So. Yep.
That was going to be my next question. So like, what do you share in addition to this? So you just pull up various examples.
Yeah, this does I'm gonna look at what slide I'm on. I'm on slide 12 yet. Yep. What do I do?
Yeah, you're 12.
Yeah, a lot of this has to do with the impact and the cost of the service and training. Yeah, I get kind of carried away, Nicole, and I do enjoy talking about what we can bring to the hospital. But this right here helps me demonstrate to the hospital if we continue training our technicians, we can continue keeping our costs in-house. So. And the team, I just one of the final things with your program, this is all neat because I could sit behind the desk and put together all my Excel sheets and explain to the leadership of what we're up to. But if your team is not on board with what you're doing, you have to share the data. We have a lot of smart guys. I always and they always take liberties of this whenever I walk into a meeting and talk about this. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I listen, and we have to listen to each other. And I'll make decisions and I'll explain what we're doing and my leadership. I meet with our team once a month, and I'll go through our latest successes and some of our failures. Boy, that was a dumb idea. I'll try to find, and I take full responsibility for it. But each of the guys, they need to know the direction, what's your next step, and then share the successes, then share the stuff that didn't work as well. Without everybody on board, your culture is very important. The guys that, I always chuckle because my goal is we spend 8+ hours in a shop, in an office, in our work environment together. And we're doing our jobs, but you think for those 8 hours, you could try to make it as pleasant as possible. I always say, I try to have everybody whistling on their way to work. Without the team on board, there's not going to be any ownership, no accountability. They're going to undermine the plan because they don't understand it, and it's just natural. And their whistles will be broken. They will not whistle on the way to work. It is tough. I think I've taken our team through horrendous growth, and I've never been more grateful for the team we have, the support system we have. Again, our culture in Marshfield Clinic is awesome. It's a good place to be. Out of my career path, I've had 20 years in leadership. The past 5 years, I'm at where I'm supposed to be. It's a great place to be, and I try to reflect that with my staff too. It is a good place to be.
So what format do you share this data into them when you're sharing it with them?
This is a lot of this is it's kind of a refrigerator art. I'll whatever our latest avenue of savings or our latest contracts that we've saved, I'll try to keep that out in front of them. A lot of the data integrity, that's been my kick lately. The guys have been rolling their eyes, but got to have clean data in, and we've been policing that and doing some extra training on that. So and I feed back to them because we have our capital equipment planning is through Strata. We have our data from our TMS program feed right into Strata, and I'll show them some of those embarrassing times when we have a 10-year-old brand new MRI, just to make a point to saying this has to be accurate. So yeah, and it's not nagging at them, it's just keeping it in front of them and letting them know that it needs to be tight. So, so if we look at our outcomes from all these slides, I appreciate everybody's patience with this. I do get, I didn't, like I said, Nicole kept me from talking about my chickens and stuff today, so we're good. I do enjoy our networking, when we get opportunities. So anytime we get to some of the Amy and the shows coming up, the WBA, Wisconsin Biomedicals Associations, we even get into some of the technical colleges. I can talk all day about work and the outcomes from this, but our biggest opportunities is our savings I can bring forward. I hate to say that because we do run SAFE programs. I have to have people on board, but the leadership listens to the savings. So the soft dollars, the reductions of the POs and the costs associated with the PO invoice uploads, the efficiencies with that, our technician productive time, instead of them hand entering data into a work order, it's imported into there. And then obviously our cost of service or available costs. The direct savings are ability to verify service and prices much quicker. I do have, there's opportunities, and let's just say we have this PartSource Pro agreement with a certain vendor. We've had direct savings where I'll have a list price of a CT tube come through, and I'm like, can you double check that? It'll be from the vendor, and I'll do a double check with PartSource, or we have some other vendors, and same vendor sticker, same part number on the tube, delivery date of the same day, and there's a $20,000 difference with one transaction. That's a lot of money to me. So the ability to verify each service event and scrutinize over that, it's one event at a time. There's with some of our opportunities with direct savings, we have pass-through pricing, contract reduction, and consolidation of the contracts. The bottom line to all of that, sorry, my neck's gotten a little bigger with COVID. I think my tie is tight. Bottom line with all of this is I'm part of a community hospital system. So the savings that I bring back keep me employed. But if you can bring a couple $1 million back into the system by running appropriately, the same linear accelerator that treated my son for cancer, the same cath lab that my brother had to go into, and probably the same cath lab I'm going to have to go into someday if I keep on eating from my COVID. But all those opportunities brings money back into your system and makes your system stronger, so you can get the latest equipment in there. You have worth to your biomed, and you have ownership for it. It's pretty cool. And I know all the guys, I try to keep the savings in front of them, but we try to keep the safety. But that's a part I think that makes this all worthwhile. So last year's article, I had an article that I did an interview with PartSource, and we showed $1.2 million in parts and contract reductions. This year, I actually, it's getting tougher as we go because I've been reducing contracts over the past 5 years. You got to start. We're starting to drill down into some of the fruit that's not hanging so low. I have $1 million reduction goal in spend, so it's not avoidable cost. So it's a tough goal because you can't count the stuff that you're not. We reduced this contract last year. Well, that was last year. You can't carry those savings into the new year. These are new avoidable costs. So I have that mapped out in front of me, and so far we're doing a pretty good job of another $1 million out of our budget this year in avoidable costs. So again, and that comes back into our community hospital. It's exciting. The savings we provide, new equipment, staffing, and then it supports and not only that, but we continue to grow as a system. It's amazing. So sorry, I was getting talked out towards the end here. I think I got most of the key points to the slides on here. So I appreciate your time with me, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. At this time, you may submit questions using the questions section of your control panel. We will take time to answer as many as we can, and we will take a moment for the questions to come through in the queue. We actually already have a couple, so I'll just get started. Hey, what time period do you use for calculating the failure rate? Rolling 12-month window? Do you look at the model or individual assets?
12 months. We do a 1-year evaluation every year, and we actually do it by, this is kind of interesting for our failure rates. We do it by overseeing is category, subcategory. So I'll break it down by subcategory. And then what we do is, so here's how the devices within the subcategory should perform for failure rate. And then I'll go down to the individual models, and I can actually see if there's a problem child out of those models on which ones, you know, an IV pump. I'm trying to think, I don't have a good example, but I can actually pinpoint, you know, there's one model that's failing ridiculously. Is it because it's old? You know, you can start digging down. Is it old? Is it a battery problem? Is it you know, never buy this thing again, or is it something we just need to make sure we're PMing that model only? So, but we do review that once a year.
What risks are you forecasting for capital purchasing, maintenance or clinical?
So the risk for the capital, we do, it's I'll call it the gonculator. How's that? It's I don't give too many. What we do is we take the age of the equipment, the risk, we take the spend, and we take there's a new thing we're putting into this, the utilization. With Medigate, we can actually tell if a CT is being utilized. We can compare 2 CTs at 2 different sites and look at the utilization. And what we do is we take all of this data, and we partnered with Strata. Strata takes this information and runs it through their gonculator, and they'll actually rate the equipment for what needs to be replaced first. And it gives you know, it might be a high risk, it might be a medium failure rate, but it's used never. So we can bump that out, or we can look at our capital spend and take a used item, get the sites where there's a high utilization, buy a new device for that, and then move the slightly used device over to a place that's not using as much. So, but it does come down to many factors with that, with our partnership with Strata, and they run it through their gonculator. It's taken some time. You can probably do it through your equipment management program if your data's clean, but you want to make sure that that it's presentable and believable.
So does you and your team play a pretty heavy involvement with capital purchasing, or do you just know the process?
So every piece of medical equipment, the purchase contracts will come past me. I do look at every one of them and review them and make sure there's no point of, unless it's necessary, the point of sale contracts are always my big target when a purchase agreement comes through, and on the addendum page 33 down in the small print, they have the 5-year term on a service contract with that. And that's the toughest part of it, because the first 5 years of that equipment are the throw me a deal, you know, when this thing's falling apart after 8 years, you know, for a service contract. But yeah, so we are heavily involved with that. We do help out a lot. I do need to, as we continue to grow as a system, we do need to partner more resources towards this, because we're not doing justice ever. Yeah.
So are you making an assumption that failure rates are due to maintenance activities? For example, an increase in failure rates should cause you to do more comprehensive preventive maintenance?
And that's where it comes down to the data driven one. We look at the failure codes. You know, if it's a battery failure, the guys tag these things as a battery failure. Yeah, it could be avoidable. We do, the big flag is if there was a calibration necessary in between PM cycles. You know, if there was some sort of maintenance that could have avoided that failure, then we need to go back and adjust our PM program so it's associated. So yeah, it's not straight failure, but a lot of training with the guys, making sure they're on board and review the work orders and make sure they're coding the failures correctly.
Thank you. We have a few more, if that's okay.
That's all right.
Where has been the area of the greatest savings? Has it been the contract savings? Yep. Okay.
Yep.
That was an
Contract is
easy one.
that's the it's very it's the biggest, and it's, you really have to put your sales cap on and make sure the customer is comfortable with it, because they like their guy with I won't mention names, but the vendor name on their shirt. You know, I come up from, I'm part of the same team with the hospital system, but they really like their vendors coming in and servicing their equipment. They've been in there for a long time. There's a lot of trust, so we try to make sure that we're inserting ourselves into the relationship. So we're coming in with them to do the maintenance and the repairs on it, and then we certainly, yeah, it's a tough line, because it's a little political, but the money's there, and if you're gonna compete and keep your savings in house, you got to train your guys and move forward with it.
So what equipment management software do you use that integrates with PartSource most effectively?
We're using TMS. Yep. And we're actually we're moving TMS onto we still have a local server, but we're going to be moving that online. I suggest, just as operational wise, it's great to have our IT folks, but it's more when there's updates and there's interfaces going on. It's so much easier to have your part source and your TMS vendor working together instead of having IT in the middle of it. So, yep, we've had, and there's your equipment management programs. I'll take a step back. I've been using TMS forever. So yeah, I'm a little biased with that. I know how to run my reports. I know where the data set should be. It's what you're comfortable with. There's some great software programs out there, but you got to master it, and you gotta make sure your data's clean in it.
Exactly. Do you or someone review or audit all work orders, or just a sampling?
I wish we did all, but we take a sampling of it. And what I'll do is I'll show you a little cheater on that. I have my reportable codes. Some of them are, obviously a user error. We have a good training program, but every once in a while you'll come up with a user error for type of failure on the work order. Well, I'll go through and I'll filter out all those problem codes and make sure that if it was a user error, if there were followed up with training, in servicing of the staff, what was the user error? Is there a trend across the system with it? So a lot of that comes down to your problem codes, or your opportunities with and I did another helper for the guys. I put a little asterisk if it's something reportable for the environment of care. It's just so they know that work order needs to be clean. All work orders need to be clean, but it's a little extra attention because this is a reportable work order. So yeah.
I feel like user error is the result of a lot of my personal IT tickets for my laptop.
I'll just say, yes.
No, go ahead. How do you define end of life, end of manufacture, end of OEM service, or end of your team's ability to service?
So that's a really awesome. I'm not doing for the simplicity into our interface into Strata. We're just calling it end of life, and it is. We do have spots for end of service, but with our, I keep on using that term, but with our gonculator, if I threw a few more variables into it, it would throw it off. We do have, so when it comes in, it's nice because as a system, I'll get an end of life letter, an end of service letter. I'll bring that up and mass edit all the devices with that serial group. And we have office support for that. And very gratefully, we have office support for that. But then they'll go through and fill out the end of life date or end of service date. But when we turn it back over, it goes to it depends off what the manufacturers call it. We follow what their definition is if they're calling it end of service. The point to all that though is it's a very manual process right now with our pulling up a vendor again, but Medigate, with our interface with Medigate. I don't buy in futures, but they have a new option that they're bringing into the software where data, the networked equipment that we have interfaced, it'll actually help and plug in that end of service light for manufacturers, models, and serial numbers. It'll actually help us out with that. So again, automating, embracing any and here that Metagate, it's a cybersecurity software, and here I'm using it for real-time location of devices utilization. It is huge. I didn't know. When you get that, it's like, oh great, another job for biomed. We have to follow up on the software. No, it's an awesome tool. And again, there's many manufacturers out there that provide this. We're using Metagate.
How often do you train or retrain your staff using TMS?
So we do our incoming staff. When staff come on board, we try to do a formal training. We do have a couple recordings out there. We probably need to make a new recording so that it's a consistent training with the guys. We do have to get a little more. We're reactive right now, and if we'll notice a problem with the program where they're using a specific code wrong, it might be an individual. If we're seeing a spread of this code misuse across the system, we'll put a formal, I'll add it to my monthly training or to the managers weekly in services so that we could bring it up. But yeah, we need to work on that. Right now it's just a kickoff when they first come on board and they're trying to figure out where the bathrooms are, and we're here. Here's TMS. We're gonna sit you through about 2 days of TMS training. Welcome aboard. But it is continuous. It is and should be continuous.
Have you explored a preferred vendor relationship to minimize cost for capital purchases?
For the minimizing of the cost for capital
purchases.
Yeah, we do have, that's where we'll get into the supply chain, and we're doing a good job of it right now. With aligning our goals with supply chain, because we do have buyer groups that we have agreements with, so we can buy certain items. And when we forecast that, we do have opportunities with that. We do need to leverage that a lot more. I'm bragging about our Strata interface, how I have this loading in there. It's still got some small gaps in there. We're still bringing that up so that we can forecast our spend and we can leverage our buying groups to buy stuff in bulk. It's a good start. We're not perfect. There's need to put more resources towards that.
All right. Well, Jay, I just want to thank you for your time and also all of our attendees. I thought this was a great webinar. As a reminder, you will receive a follow-up email that includes a link to the recording within approximately 2 to 3 business days via email. You will also include invitations for future emails in this series. At this time, the webcast is ended. Thank you for attending and have a great day.
Yeah, thanks a lot.